Protesters opposing recent amendment of the Electoral Act on Tuesday returned to the National Assembly for a second execution. The former Rivers State Governor and Minister of Transport, former Minister of Transport, Rotimi Amaechi, joined the demonstration. Amaechi's appearance came amid growing public outrage over the removal of the provision mandating real-time electronic transmission of votes. The former governor reportedly had a tense encounter with the police officers as tension heightened over the decision taken by the Godswill Akpabio's-led Senate. Public anger over the Electoral Act amendment had sparked on Monday when former Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi led hundreds of protesters to the National Assembly complex in Abuja. The protest, organized under the banner of the National Opposition Movement, NOM, drew participants from across the country who demanded transparent and compulsory electronic transmission of election results ahead of the 2027 general elections. Demonstrators carried placards calling for sweeping electoral reforms and urging Senate President Godswill Akpabio to desist from actions perceived as undermining the Electoral Act. Some protesters went further, openly calling for his resignation and accusing the leadership of the National Assembly of ignoring sustained public demands for electoral transparency. The protest prompted a heavy security presence at the National Assembly with the personnel from the Nigerian Police Force, Nigerian Army, Department of State Services (DSS), Nigerian Security and Civil Defense Corps (NSCDC), and other agencies deployed to barricade the main entrance and prevent the breakdown of law and order. Addressing protesters at the entrance of the complex on Monday, Obi thanked Nigerians for turning out in large numbers, describing the demonstration as a lawful and patriotic demand for reforms. I want to thank the passionate Nigerians who have come out this morning to be part of this just demand for a free, transparent, fair election process. Obi said, we must have a better Nigeria where all of us can be proud to say we are Nigerians. He disclosed that security operative had advised protesters not to proceed beyond the National Assembly gate, and directive, he said, was obeyed in the interest of peace. Obi also renewed calls for compulsory electronic transmission of results directly from polling units, urging that it would curb electoral manipulation and enable citizens to monitor the process in real time. Election results must be transmitted electronically from the polling booths directly. Let people watch it, and he said, this is what is done in South Africa, Ghana, and other countries. The giant of Africa has refused to be giant. We cannot continue to shame Africa. Meanwhile, the Senate is expected to convene an emergency plenary session on Tuesday over its controversial handling of amendments of the Electoral Act, particularly the removal of the clause mandating real-time electronic transmission of elections results. The extraordinary sitting came days after the passage of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2026, which has attracted widespread condemnation from civil society groups, opposition politicians, labor unions, professional bodies, religious leaders, and growing youth-led protests movement. With criticism mounting and protests spilling to the gate of the National Assembly, Senate leadership announced the emergency session late Sunday. In a statement signed by the clerk of the Senate, Emmanuel Odo, it was disclosed that the Senate President Godswill Akpabio directed the reconvening of the plenary for an emergency sitting on Tuesday, February 10, 2026. The statement said a plenary would commence at 12 noon with all 105 senators expected to attend the session. In a recent development, a fresh controversy has erupted in the National Assembly following the allegation by the senators that the version of the electoral bill circulated on Tuesday, February 10, 2026 was altered from what lawmakers approved during the plenary last week. Just nụrụ okene na akụkọ ebe Godswill Akpabio na-achị Nigeria na Senate. Nụrụ okene na akụkọ ka ngụgharịarị ya unu soro m nụrụ. Abeg. Enwere ihe ọ ga-awe nụcha na ba ya anụ ọdụ ka ọgụ nwa okerezi na nwọrọ onwe. In a recent development, a fresh controversy has erupted in the National Assembly following the allegation by a Senate source that the version of the electoral bill circulated on Tuesday, February 10th, 2026, was altered from what lawmakers approved during plenary last week. According to the source, the clause passed by the Senate on Wednesday, February 4th, 2026, expressly required presiding officers at polling units to electronically transmit election results in real time to the Independent National Electoral Commission's result viewing portal, IREV. However, the source alleged that the votes and proceedings released on Tuesday omitted this requirement and replaced it with a previous mandate with a provision mandating only manual transmission of results to the next level of collation. Man, this is not what the Senate passed last week, the source said, warning that the chamber could reconvene at any time as the issue develops. Documents shared by the source indicate that during the plenary on February 4th, the Senate considered the adopted committee recommendations on clauses relating to vote counting and result transmission. Under Clause 59, the Senate retained that the existing provision following a motion moved by Senator Simon Bakola along Plateau South, which was put to a vote and approved. Attention then shifted to Clause 60, which dealt with the vote counting and election forms. The clause initially required the presiding officer to record votes scored by each candidate on prescribed forms, which must be signed and stamped by the presiding officer and countersigned by the candidates of their polling agents, their polling agents. Clause 60, paragraph 3 specifically provided that the presiding officer must electronically transmit results from each polling unit to the IREV portal in real time after the reforms had been duly signed and stamped. An amendment was later proposed by Senator Mohammed Tahir Mungunu, Borno North, seeking delete Clause 60, paragraph 3 and replace it with the wording in Section 60, paragraph 3 of the Principal Act. Following the deliberations, and Senate adopted an amended version of Clause 60. The version now appeared in the vote and proceedings as Clause 60, paragraph 5 states. The presiding officer shall transmit the result, including total number of accredited voters, to the next level of collation. The Senate source insisted that the wordings doesn't reflect what lawmakers approved, describing the change as fraudulent. A document from the February 4th sitting showed that the Senate agreed to retain Clause 59 and passed Clause 60, with provisions requiring presiding officers to count votes, record them, prescribe forms, and ensure the forms are signed and stamped. The amendment proposal, as captured in the document, states, leave out the provision of Clause 60, paragraph 3, and insert the provision of Section 60, paragraph 3 of the Principal Act instead thereof. The adopted provision include that the presiding officer shall count and announce results at the polling unit and transmit results, including the total number of accredited voters to the next level of collation. The clause also prescribes penalties for willful contravention, including a fine of not less than 500,000 naira or imprisonment for a term of not less than 6 months, or both. The question that Clause 60 is amended should stand. Part of the bill was put to a vote and agreed by the Senate. Meanwhile, the Senate also passed other provisions of the bill. Clause 61 allowed a candidate or polling agent present at a polling unit to request a recount of votes, provided such a recount is conducted only once. Clause 62 on post-election procedures and collation of results was also approved, requiring presiding officers to deliver results and election materials under scrutiny to designated electoral officers. The Senate source alleged that the votes and proceedings released on Tuesday removed any reference to electronic transmission to the IREV portal, a move described as inconsistent with the decision taken in the Senate floor. According to the source, Senator Mohammed Tahir Mungunu, allegedly working with the Senate President Godswill Akpabio and other All Progressive Congress APC senators, introduced previsos affecting the electoral transmission of results to the IREF portal. Obodo derugo jijinji, mi mano derugo ya. Confusion gathering. Onwere ihe unu na-aghọta. Nya na emecha plenary kwucha ihe obodo kwesịrị ịdị ka ya na Electoral Act. Then ha mechie plenary. Then ndị isi okpokpo ma ndị ọdụ okpokpo eje mmefu ịshịa ihe kwutere n'okwu na Senate House n'ime plenary were ihe ha chọrọ ti. Ọkwa ịhụrụ if there is no sanction for this autono ndị a na-eme na Senate ọnwụ na-enweghị onye held responsible for this kind of altercation ma obodo enweghị ike ịdụ mma. Ịma na obodo awa obodo ụmụ anụmanụ ọwụkwa njakịrị. Ịma na obodo a were just playing and jonesing around. Ahụ ihe senators na-ekwu that this wasn't what was agreed in the House mgbe ha na-ekwu okwu this particular Electoral Act and transmission na ha kwekọrịtavuru ka enwee transmission. How come na nke a pasijiri je wegara ndị INEC wuzi nke amishishiri ebe ashi live transmission ga-adị on? How come? Ọ ka ha mma n'ọnụ. Yes, because ha na-achọ onye ha na-arọ ka isi ya na ya ka unu were shi na ọmụoshi. Ọ ka unu mma n'ọnụ bụ ndị senators na unu kwucha okwu ụfọdụ n'ime unu eje mishisha ihe ekwuru were ọzọ ti. For real? Ihuru that committee dị in charge of this particular review ekwesịrị inwe committee for Electoral Act. That committee dị mma akpọta ha haza ezigbote ajụjụ ya na this particular amendment of Electoral Act. Ha dị mma ịza ajụjụ ya, because nothing anybody won't tell me about this kind of misconception. So emecha plenary kwucha ihe a ya eme for Nigeria ịdụ mma. Then selected few eje wofucha mefucha dị akwụkwọ ekwutere n'okwu kwekọrịta na ihe a ga-eme were nke ha filere na ihe ga-efavor ha nwa because of maybe ebe ha chi minyecha na the place. Chere ka ịhụ INEC ha eme anything about it. Nigerian government nwere ike ha eme anything about it. Senators nwere ike too ha eme anything about it. They will just sweep it under the carpet or slide there like this. Otu ahụ ka constitution a ishi wee dị. You saw when a man rose up, a senator rose up in the house where say na so ihe ji aya ahia na this country aye ji ha aga n'ihu with this constitution. This particular constitution. Ebe concurrent list nwere X number of items. The other list nwere X number of items. Nya akwa ọkụkọ anụ nke ọgazi wọkụ ekwuo ihe a ga-eme enwe ugwu ewere ndị ezigbo then enwe ndụ ụtali hama ndụ n'enu for a na-apịa the hama n'isi. Ọwụghị otu eshikpe ikpe nke a ka a ga-eshikpe ikpe nke onye nke a. Ọwụghị kwota enyere ndị nke a ka a ga-enye ndị nke a. Unu achị n'obodo ụwa Nigeria n'ebe ka ọ we're just joking around for real. Ihe mebiri emebi ekwesịrị idezi na this country they three much. I'm not even kidding you. Ihe mebiri emebi ekwesịrị idezi na this country. Ọ dị ka sansan. And ihe kwuru n'ọnụ emeghe eme na this country dị ka aja dị n'ala. That's another truth. Ruo one mgbe ka anyị ga-anọgide n'ime mmehie anụnwa ka amara wee bara anyị ụba. Ruo one mgbe kedu mgbe ọwụ anyị ga-anọkata na mmehie amara wee bara anyị ụba? Chineke ekwere. Kedu ihe bụ your take? So ofu call ka m ga-aza, ofu onye nwere iru ọma, so ofu mkpụrụ call ka m ga-aza. 0902-311-1009 maọkwa na 0909-771-1009 0909-771-1009 ka nza ofu call. Hello.
Yeah.
Good evening. Ndewo.
Okay.
Ndewo. Enna.
Nigeria,
Ike gwụrụ.
Mana ya ata akwụkwọ Then on now and all my book na adu. Okay. Amaechi no that na adu. Abi hello to you brother, you think that that for ya.
Oh yeah.
Na ndio to that.
Ọkwa ndị ọchịchị ji anyị n'obodo ahụ. Ike gwụrụ. Hey. Daalụ sir. Ike gwụrụ Nigeria needs total restructuring. That's the word. Francis Naman. Nigeria needs total overhauling. Okuna hurupesi nwa Tinubu sheje. Una hurupesi Sheyi Tinubu sheje. Sheyi Tinubu ga-adị bloody karịa papia. The pace o ji eje. Wike na nwa ya na-ele. But hụrụ ka Sheyi Tinubu na Wike shi akpọgharị ụmụ ha. Etiba ha na ihe a na-arụ. Sheyi Tinubu ga-adịgodi ezigbote bloody karịa papia. Enwebedi ihe anyị hụrụ anyị na-akpọkashi. Ọkwa Morocco ka very dark man jere ka o je nene bọọlụ fụta n'ime ebe a na-enene ihe ebe a na-eri ihe wee hụ na picture Sheyi Tinubu do ebe ahụ. Gwanụ m Sheyi Tinubu ọwụ onye Morocco. Afọ akenen okwu abụrụ nni. Ebe unu si n'onu mbụ na Solid 100.9 FM. Ọ nọ na mba jelu mba ozi ọ dị na 10B Savage Crescent n'ime GRA n'Enugu. Afa mba ozi eji ọfada na ọfịja ji eme ọnụ adọ na before chi ezi ego ga-adasịsị ya. Ekene m ndị be anyị. Nigeria were not ready. I think so too. Really? Power belongs to the people. But ndị na-achị anyị chọrọ ime anyị amụrụ anyị ewere ọkụ. Ndị na-achị anyị feelere na power wụ n'aka ha ka ọ dị. Mana we go clear their doubt come 2027. Ka na-ejegbodo. It doesn't matter where you are. Ọ bụrụ ha na ị na-ezuzu nye ọkụ ba APC. Anyị were arụrụ ana birie ADC ma birie PDP wụya. Anyị were arụrụ ana rụsa ya arụrụ ana ikwete na ọ na-eme. Onye ọwụ nakwa ịkwado onwe ya ugwu. We're not even begging you people. Onye ọwụ na just ka aji n'ume kwado onwe ya ugwu. I think we've really suffered enough. Ọ bụrụ ha na unu akwa ihuru onwe unu ugwu. Bido n'ishi ruo n'ọdụ. Anyị ejiri arụrụ ana tụọ vote void. Anyị anọrọ without government. Unu amegherie vote ọzọ chọta 2/3 from everywhere unu chọrọ issue chọta ya. Ma unu ejiri aka ya unu kpọọ ụmụnna unu unu shido akpọ ha ebiri unu na-eje chiwa onwe unu. Ebe unu si n'ọnụ anyị bụ na Solid 100.9 FM. Udo dịrị ndị be anyị ekene m unu.
Hello, Africa. Do you want to work in the healthcare sector? Do you want to be a trained, certified nursing assistant, medical assistant?
Thank you so much for joining, guys. I appreciate you.
To enroll for Push Africa's one-year diploma in certified nursing assistant training happening at the African University College of Science and Technology.